slapped by God. Well, this actually happened to me.
Are you sure about that?
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Blank. I respond to various theological and ideological questions and claims from a rationalistic and naturalistic approach in an effort to give and explain the opposite viewpoint and help to balance the conversation. Today we're taking a look at a video from a creator called Big John Steele, a supposed former atheist who saw the light and turned away from his wicked, sinful non-belief and discovered the truth and the healing power of Jesus.
Okay, now we're going to respond to the response by Dr. Plink. It's funny because I don't know if it's the resolution or not on his on my browser. What attracted me to actually was that I thought it was Dr. Professor Pink, which of course is Rosado in Spanish, and I'm Professor Rosado. So I thought here's somebody with the English version of my what do you call it? I guess my online ID. So, but when I blew it up a little more, the zoom, I can say, oh, it's Plink. I laughed at that. But, you know, God works in mysterious ways. So I said, let me subscribe to him. Maybe there's something that we can respond to at one time. And so, yeah, so this was uploaded 12 hours ago. Professor Plink, did this apologist have good reasons to leave atheism? A little bit, I just finished a video on an evangelical leaving evangelicalism to go to Catholicism. So we got people flipping out all over the place. So we'll give this a view here and see what goes. Here goes.
Now, when taking a look at this video, I realized that this is something I haven't really touched on much before in my time as a counter-apologist. Former skeptics turned faithful. And, well, there's a very good reason for that, because they are in remarkably short supply. Because while religious switching from one faith to another is relatively common, and deconversion away from religion altogether is even more common, and that was the path that I took that brought me out of the religion I was raised with, conversion from atheism into a religious faith is exceedingly rare. Pew Research's most recent study on religious switching found that among atheists, less than 1% claim to have become more religious over time, while 72% became even less religious, 24% staying the same, and 4% a bit of both.
Basically, this thing is going on. There's people who are having different issues with religiosity, and of course that is an issue concerning the religious. As anyone who knows my teachings on this issue is that we should not be religious at all. I am anti-religion, and this is the reason, as you saw in that clip there, because people they don't have the true relationship with God. Their relationship with God is a religious one. So it simply is through a religion, and they confuse religious ritual with true worship. They confuse the ritual and the presence of the church as an organization as a relationship with God. What you have is a relationship with the organization. You don't have a relationship with God. So going to church is not a relationship with God. Hearing a preacher or going through reading Christian books is not a relationship with God. It's not Christian living. It has nothing to do with it. You're just reading books. They have a religious content, but then that's all you're getting is religiosity. You're not getting any true, unique relationship with God. What did the ancient church have? They didn't have books. Right? They didn't go study theology. They had true relationship. The disciples had a true relationship with Jesus Christ, and that they related to their disciples, and those disciples related that and experienced it in their lives, because that was part of the process of the discipleship, was to make sure that they experience in their life that walk with Christ, that unique, true relationship with God. That's the point. All of that got lost and became religiosity, just like the other religions in the world. It was just another religion. And this is where people are confused today. They look at religion, and you have atheists that condemn and complain about religion. They're all right. They're absolutely right, because they're talking about religion. I talk about religion. I condemn it as much as the atheist does. And I also condemn Christians that are religious. So even in my own faith, it doesn't matter. You're religious. You don't have the truth. You're not in the truth. And one day you'll end up as an atheist or as another type of religious person, but it's just still religiosity at the end of the day. So let's continue hearing this.
But yeah, that would mean that less than 1% of confirmed self-described atheists become even a little more religious throughout their lifetime. But hey, that only accounts for people who still self-identify themselves as atheists. It wouldn't account for people who have converted out of atheism and into, say, Christianity, like our friend John here today has. Well, even there, the numbers are still not very good, as about 91 million U.S. adults, or 35%, have switched their religion since childhood. And from that, about 9 million, or 3.6%, have become Christians. Now, that would also account for people who were raised as some other faith other than Christian who became Christians, not just atheists. While more than 57 million, or 21.9%, have left Christianity. Meanwhile, about 53 million, or 20.2%, have become religiously unaffiliated, which is where you'll find all self-described atheists.
And me, because if they asked me the question, I would say I don't have a religion. So don't be too hyped in these numbers. These numbers need more clarification, right? There are a number of us who are anti-religious and will answer the question in the negative, that in other words, that we are not religious. We're not affiliated religiously, because that's really the truth of the matter. When you are a true follower of God, you have a true interactive relationship with God, you cannot be religious, and you cannot consider yourself as religious. You understand that religiosity is the opposite of knowing that God is, right? And it supersedes religion, because you also realize that doesn't matter what religion, so to speak, you were born into, or what you were last or presently associated with. Because some people still in churches, they still go to church, but their relationship transcends the denomination, transcends the organizational churchiness and religiosity into a very genuine relationship. You're a different genuine Christian, different type, and you stand out from the rest. Okay, some people will even say, he's a little, really, dedicated. He's very dedicated to the Lord, and he's in his this and that. Usually end up in ministry, but a lot of people end up in ministry. A lot of religious people end up in ministry too. But they don't end up saying the same things. I mean, you're not going to hear what I say with most of these religious pastors or ministers. You're not going to hear that. Okay? Because they are religious. I am not. Simply, I know that my Redeemer liveth. And so if you follow my channels, you'll know, you'll be hearing why that is, and why it's an issue of authenticity and not religiosity. Okay, let's continue.
Meanwhile, about 9 million, a mere 3.5%, have joined a religion after being raised without one. And again, that would mean all religions. So a very small amount of people who were raised unreligious became religious, and even fewer of those became Christians.
Those who have heard also my talks on atheism will know that that doesn't matter. These numbers don't mean nothing, because there are many people who are in, or let's just put it this way, they're not outside of God. Many people are not away from God. Okay? So I'm putting it in a very different perspective so that you can understand better what I mean. They're not against God. Even those that say that God does not exist, they're not offending God. They're not outside of God either. Those who were Christian and said they came to realize that God doesn't exist, so I can't be a Christian, I must not be, and I don't care to be religious anymore, and that's fine. And so I'm just going to leave the church. They have not left God. So I have a very clear delineage of who and who is not in God. And the fact is that many, if not most, atheists are still in God. They still have God, and they're still worshiping God. They're not doing it like they did religiously, but they are doing it because it's by de facto. There's a lot of things that the atheists are not realizing, but they have not offended God, simply. And most of them are very much still in God, very much still. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Listen, you can make mistakes and be in God. It doesn't mean you don't have God anymore just because you made a mistake, because your thinking isn't 100%, high IQ. It doesn't, God. That's not the basis for being in God. And God is really the determiner. He's the determiner. And if he sees that you don't know what you're talking about, that you don't know what you're thinking, and you don't understand what you're believing, then that's what it is. But it's not a situation where you lose your salvation or fall out of grace with God. God knows people. He knows that people make mistakes. It's as simple as that. Okay, so those numbers, I can tell you for a fact that these numbers that he's looking at mean nothing to the point, to the matter at hand.
So while there are some actual former atheists come Christians out there, they aren't in abundant supply. And furthermore, whenever I do hear a "I once was lost, now am found" supposed former atheist conversion story, it almost always amounts to someone who was always a believer, went through a little rebellious teenager phase where they hated going to church or were mad at God because something bad happened to them, and after a few years went back to the faith that they never really left but only put up on a shelf for a while. But then they try to spin that into their apologetic tactic of, "I was once a lowly, non-believing atheist heathen just like you, so take my word for it." But hey, maybe I'm jumping the gun here and way off base when it comes to John and his conversion story. Maybe he's going to be coming with some rock-solid, totally justifiable reasons to believe in not only God, I believe he would conclude that some random who was just claiming to be God actually attacked you. Or if you would say there
just showed up. It wasn't just some warm, fuzzy feeling or a voice in my head. It's more like someone who was just bigger than reality, walked into the room and was like, "All right, that's enough, get up." And I'm not
All right, the guy gave a little testimony of something that happened to him. Now, the curious thing, if you've seen my other video talking about Bogdan Chekiev, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, that he converted, he left evangelicalism to go into Catholicism. I talk about his story. Now, if you see that video and then you watch this one, you'll see that there is a difference. This one is interesting because the quality of the experience is different than in Bogdan's case, right? Here you see that he makes a distinction that wasn't a feeling. Okay? So this conversion, I'm not saying that it is what it is. I'm just saying that the way he is describing it closely resembles something like Paul, when he was on the way to Damascus and he got knocked off his horse. Right? Because he knows he went through something, he experienced something that was unique and life changing. This guy, it wasn't a feeling, it wasn't a voice in his head. This guy's having that same biblical experience. Okay? So, this is quite different than the experience that Bogdan has, was he admits it's a feeling. He had a feeling. A very distinct experiences here, but let's hear more of it, and let's try to start over at that beginning.
I know what it means. So now that all that's established, now I'll hear you out.
See, I was in a pretty dark place at the time. I was homeless, I was sleeping in the back of a gym, dealing with depression, the whole 9 yards. And then out of nowhere, this overwhelming presence just showed up. It wasn't just some warm, fuzzy feeling or a voice in my head. It's more like someone who was just bigger than reality, walked into the room and was like, all right, that's enough, get up. And I'm not kidding, it changed me overnight.
So, yeah.
Right, so that is different than Bogdan's experience, right? Now, this is very akin. This was a guy who wasn't really, necessarily looking for God. And he practically, he ran into God, or better say, God came to him, according to his account. Okay, so is enough to make him, abandon his freedom and liberty as an atheist, right? That you don't have to be living a certain way or follow rules or anything. You're your own person. And to go into or back into or into a religious construct it has to be significant. Now, I'm also assuming that I'm not saying that that the result of this is going into a religious construct. It doesn't and shouldn't have been. But I'm just saying that to have them go into what he would think was religion again, or for the first time, would be a great, different thing. Something had to really impact him significantly for that to occur. So you have to give it some weight.
Just as I said, you meant metaphorically. Now, though I do find that I was once an atheist and now have seen the light of Christianity stories are relatively rare, when I do hear them, this is what they tend to be. Someone was in a bad way, living a bad life, replete with drugs and alcohol, homelessness, destitute, hitting actual rock bottom, not the WWE move. And finding faith in religion was their path out of that.
Again, he didn't find faith in religion. Correction. See, there was no religion preached to him. You're ignoring the experience, because that was what changed him, not religion taught to him or preached to him. Other people have that religious, introduction and whatnot. That's not what he says that happened. Okay? So he had an encounter. So that's different than what you're explaining.
Now look, I'm not going to criticize how people pull themselves up from bottoming out. When you're drowning, any lifeline will do, even a religious one. Any port in a storm, as they say, even if that port is a church filled with parishioners. And I've no desire to attack the faith of someone whose life was greatly improved, possibly even saved by grace. a mental and emotional focal point that you could view as being able to do the things that you believed yourself incapable of. Namely, changing you in a positive way to improve your life. A change that you ended up doing yourself, hopefully with help and support from friends and family, but that you now attribute to literal divine intervention.
Well, so what are we going to attribute it to? So if you what are you going to attribute it to? That means everybody needs to have and can induce this in themselves, is what you would say. So why isn't that taught? I mean, you seem to think that this is something that can be induced by anyone. You should be, I'm a psychotherapist, but even that would make you, quite a big name if you can come and help people induce that in their own lives. Because it's a thing, right? It wasn't an entity that came and did it, so then it should be replicatable. Why don't you just come out and do it with people, and then that we can change everyone's lives here without the need for religion and all that? Why aren't you doing that? Or anyone, for that matter of fact. No, he's going to excuse away the uncomfortable situation where he really cannot give a reason for what this person experienced in his life. So you're going to minimize it as much as possible. That's what's happening now. So that's what you're doing, right? So let's go. We're analyzing you like you analyze this guy. So you're up to analysis as well. So let's go.
Hey, if belief in God is what you needed to get you there, more power to you. But in the realm of discussing reality and what actually happened during your recovery, you did it yourself, pal. So kudos to you, but not to your imaginary friend.
Millions, if not billions of people throughout time and around the world have claimed to have an experience with God. That's not just a few random breakdowns. That's actually data, right? Now, does that prove God exists to you? Probably not. But it's convincing for those who go through it. And if even one of those encounters is the real deal, well, that changes everything.
Millions, if not billions of people throughout history and all around the world have claimed to have encountered ghosts or vampires or something.
But they haven't left drugs because of them. You just stuck your foot into doo-doo. They have not changed their lives. They have not started a church for people who've seen ghosts and vampires. Okay, that's the difference. All right. So again, you try to, you get as bad as some religious folks trying to prove God exists, trying to explain away experiences that are otherwise unexplainable. You can't minimize this. When people are not crazy, you can't minimize an experience that is significant. You can't minimize my experience that I had when I was 8 years old. That brought me in and kept me in all of these 54 years since. You cannot explain that away. No, not so lightly, sir. I'm sorry, but that cannot be had. Okay, so again, you're trying to be religious and smart, and you're being religious. That's why I mention it, because even as an atheist, you're giving an apologetics type of response to this, minimizing it. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work because people can see the sincerity and sense it, in what he said, and even when I say, because it's real stuff. This is real things that happen, and I don't need to try to persuade you for religion, because I'm not interested. In my teachings, I'm against religiosity. So I always tell you, you don't have to believe me. This is not about believing me, but you're asking why. So I'm giving you why have lived my 54 years of my life the way I do and have not changed. Why? So I'm answering that question. This guy here, this kid, I'm going to say, he had an experience. He's telling you why it changed his life. It's called quality. It's not ghosts and vampires. Okay? It's a life-changing encounter. Same thing that happened to Paul in the Bible. So there's biblical bases for the experience that he had and the ones that I had. Okay? So understand, you have to understand it's not ghosts or vampires. Okay? So you have an experience, but you have to, you can't just disregard an experience that a person has had. And you can't call them crazy or anything else, because obviously they're not. They are not suffering from craziness. I'm a psychotherapist. I help people that are having issues, mental issues. And that you would want to disregard what I say. He's just insane. He's crazy. No, you are thinking that I would have that type of mental problem. Okay, that's what's insane. You're disregarding of what's being communicated. Okay, and again, this is not to prove that God exists for you, right? It's just simply the question: why do you believe? Why did this affect your life? And so that was the answer. What happened to us?
Thing akin to vampires based on the cultural stories of their time, or supernatural monsters of various kinds.
This ridiculousness.
Because if a billion people claim to have seen something that doesn't actually exist, then they were, in fact, all wrong.
Right. And now comes the meat and potatoes. See, the problem is that, and the atheist bases their thinking on the following: that God does not exist. Okay? That is the basis of atheistic thinking. That there is, and therefore there is no God. The problem is that God, the God of the Bible, never claimed to exist. As a matter of fact, the Bible, the English version of the Bible, came to be published before the word existed. So you want to talk about real things that happen? That's one for you. Before the word existed, the English version of the Bible was published, King James Version. The word exists came into usage after the Bible was published, without the word, which is interesting. Why wouldn't, if the Christians wanted people to believe that God exists, why didn't they just wait for the word existence? Surely it was already being, thrown about in the academic world and in the thinking world out there. Oh, wait a minute, they're talking about this word existere. And that would be good, to prove, to bring home that, God is real, He's existing. But you see that the English Bible didn't wait for it. So why weren't they interested in waiting for the word exist? Maybe somebody didn't want that word in there and didn't want that word associated with the God of the Bible. Now, all the other gods, these idols, if you will, and all these myths, they all want to exist. They all claim to exist. And they claim their birthing stories all have them coming from existing things. But the God of the Bible is unique in not claiming existence at all. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God creates the heavens and the earth, which is everything. And later on in the Bible it says God created all things. So the notion of Atheist, which if you know a little German or Latin, existere, which means coming out, ex, like exit, coming out of it. Well, ex is coming out of what is. You cannot say that God came out of what is. But what does God say? He says, I am that I am. That's what he says about himself. And then what are you supposed to think? That I am that I am? No. You're supposed to say, oh, he is that he is. Meaning that God is. He does not ex is, he is. Everything is ex-ist in relation to God, who is. So the word usage here is causing a straw man God to be referred to. And Christians fall into, the theists fall into this trap. All theists, Muslim theists, Jewish theists, Christian theists, whatever have you, you have them falling into the trap of using the word exist and trying now to make God exist. Which, if God existed, wouldn't be God, because then he would be subject to things. That's not God. That's not the Creator God. That's not the God that's described and detailed in the Bible. It's not. So this question and everything that the atheists think, the way they think, is called epistemic bias, and that's what they accuse Christians of having. That because things are here, that means God created it. But if you look at the Webster Dictionary, it tells you that the things that existence are things that are real. And then when you go to real, you see real are things that exist. So who's being circular in reasoning, and who has epistemic bias? The wrong assumption is that God has to exist because everything has to exist if it is real. Well, that's true. Everything has to exist if it's real, and there has to be proof. If it's real, there has to be proof and evidence. The problem is that all reality and existence was created by God. Therefore, he is not in the scope of real or existing. That's all. The atheist finds difficulty in thinking conceptually, which the Webster Dictionary clearly tells us that, and you can look at any type of reference on this, that if you're having a discussion about God, the Creator God, it has to be done conceptually. Because of course he's not a thing to be proven materialistically or naturally, which is he's going to talk about. You cannot be expecting the accoutrements, the saliencies of the naturalness of the material things from a God who created those things to begin with, who created the substance of reality and existence. Well, you say, well, what was there before? He is. That's what he meant. I am that I am. He is that he is. That's it. He is eternal. Just like you want the universe to be eternal, It is only it shows eternity and not true eternity. It's not truly eternal. It loops, right? It comes and goes, it comes and goes because of the physical nature of things. But it's emulating eternity. But the true is that is eternal is God. Okay? Now again, this is concept. The issue of God is conceptual. But you have to be able to have the discussion. You have to be able to think conceptually. Because there is a thing called conceptual validity, which is evidence, by the way. So you want evidence? Conceptual validity is evidence. It's a concept. Is the concept valid? It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be proven true. But atheists do not allow there to be an intellectual discussion of God, because again they limit it to a straw man God, which is incorrect. It becomes a stupid posit. It becomes a stupid argument or debate with people trying to prove a straw man God, not even the God of the Bible. Because you're not talking about the God of the Bible if you're asking for proof and evidence. Because you're not understanding. It's not because there is no God. It's because you're not understanding the claim that's in the Scripture. It is distinct than any other. So that's the reality with that. And the fact that you cannot think conceptually is a limitation. You have that limitation, but it is a limitation.
Countless people over the course of human history have claimed to have had visions of the future, specifically words in belief and religious experience in order to strengthen their claims, but conveniently ignore the complete disagreement on what belief or what kind of experience the claims were to have had. It's not just billions of people have claimed to see God. It's a bunch of people claim to encounter Zeus, and a bunch of people claim to have encountered Odin, and a bunch of people claim to have spoken to Vishnu, and a lot of people claim to have heard Brahma. A number of people claim to have touched Krishna, and a lot of people claim to have felt the presence of Yahweh, etc. And given the supposed singular nature of the God that you believe in, to the exclusion of the existence of all others, then anyone claiming to have experienced any God who isn't your God is actually evidence against your God.
Not so, and I'll tell you why. Because if the only thing you know of as God, this is like the Muslim issue, is the Muslim God, the God of Islam, is it the same God as the God of the Bible? Is it the same God as the God of the Jews? Okay, we don't have to go to Vishnu, because this is very clear. It's going to be very simple. Okay, so if that's all you know and understand, what the Bible teaches us is that God's going to hear your prayer. God is going to react to someone who believes that, that God is hearing them. They don't know who the God is or the true God, but they're praying, God, whoever you are out there. Or they were taught it was Vishnu or whatever, the frog God. Please help me. I'm in trouble. I need help from you, the God, the true God. And they believe. The only God that can hear them is the only God that there is. So it's not an issue that which God is the true God. There is only one God. There was always one God. And I explained this even in the Bible. It shows you this in the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel wasn't made by Christians. It wasn't built by Jews. It was built by pagans. They had their own gods. See? And so they built their, and even if you don't have to believe that it's a real account, but what is the story teaching? The story is teaching that it doesn't matter what God these people were praying to, or which god or gods they were going to venerate once they got up to the top of this tower, right? The only God that came down and confused the languages was the God of the Bible, period. So again, it doesn't matter. The gods that man named and gave names to and thought that was God or whatnot, people make mistakes. That's all. They don't know. Right? So how can God hold it against it? They don't know. But if they have a sincere heart and they're trying, they have nothing else in their left to live for, and they have a child that's dying there and they pray to whatever God they know, how is God going to deny that? So yes, there are going to be stories. I prayed to this God, or I prayed to God, and he responded to me. He healed me, or he healed my family. He healed my son or my daughter. How is it that it shouldn't be? Just because you don't know his name? Did you just say, oh, you don't need to call me by names? I'm not paying attention to you. The reason we have all these the false gods and whatnot, and people who can claim, assuming that they're real experiences that they had, is because God is a God of love and mercy. That is all. It doesn't disprove God. It is in favor that there is a God, and a single God. For those theologians out there, it's the reason why God calls himself Elohim, a plural, gods, because in the reality of the world, all the gods that they thought that were, there's only one God. Know it or not, if it doesn't matter. It still doesn't. This guy was praying to so, the other one to this one, the other one to that one, and there's only one God. That's why God calls himself gods, Elohim, because there are no others. I am the only one, right? So this is what it is. We could debate. People take debates with that and blah blah blah. It's silly. At the end of the day, the bottom line is, did God create other gods, even to those people who are religious? And they can't say yes. They can't, because there are no other, and God says it himself. Okay, so that's
But you sneakily try to use it as evidence for your side. Well, none of it is actual good evidence. Everyone can indeed be wrong. 100% of people claiming to have had any experience of any god can indeed all be either mistaken or lying. And, to go with your own line of thinking, if even one of those people claiming to have experienced any god other than the Christian God are correct, well then that changes everything.
I already explained why it doesn't. Of course, with the typical Christian thinking and former Christian, now atheist thinking, it's true. You would think that way, but not what I explained to you. You don't think that way, right? When you understand the truth of what the Bible is actually teaching. Okay, so that doesn't work.
And Christianity is therefore automatically false.
Didn't see that coming, did you?
Picture this. You walk into the woods, you look around for maybe a minute. You don't see any deer, so you turn around and you walk back out and say, well, I guess deer don't exist. That would be ridiculous, right? But that's honestly what atheism feels like to me. We got a massive universe with billions of galaxies, dimensions we can't even wrap our heads around, and we've explored maybe 0.0001% of it. And then we're like, yep, Definitely no God here.
Sure, because we've never heard this one before.
No, and this is the example I say that the Christians have it wrong here. I'm sorry. You have it wrong. You're still trying to prove that within that space, a certain percentage, you'll find God there. Because, see, when you're stuck, if you say that God exists, he has to be there. So you're proving their point. You're making a big mistake. You're not supposed to use the word exists with God, because God did not ensure that word should be associated with him simply. You have to use the biblical word. Christians need to use biblical basis in their verbiage and in their apologetics. You cannot say God exists. You have to say what the Bible says. And the Bible says that he is. That's it. Because now you got this silliness going on with these atheists with this existence issue, which has nothing to do with the God of the Bible, simply. So this is a big error on the part of Christians and theists in general, trying to put God into that spatial illustration. God is not part of that. He created all of it. 100% was created by God. So where is God in that 100%? He's not there. But that's all we're stuck to examine and to get proof of and to have evidence in. The 100% of what? Of what God created. That's it. How come is that difficult for you guys to understand that when somebody creates something, you're not in it? I gave this example in an atheist forum one day, and they all went crazy. I said, when you write a book, are you in the book? Do you exist in the book that you wrote? That's something you create. How about do a painting? Do you exist physically, existentially in the painting you paint, even if it's of yourself? Do you exist in that painting? Here in this video, you're looking at me at your computer screen or phone. Do I exist in your device? No. See, but the atheist says, well, if God exists, he has to be there. You're right. But he does not. Existence is that book. Existence is that video. And even I, who am creating this video, I do not exist inside this video. So that's the way people need to understand this. It is conceptually valid because you're watching the validity right now. And even this atheist here is in a video. He's not there physically, right? And it's only that, well, he has his voice and things because he does exist. He is part of existence. You have to understand, we're still in the same quagmire. It is a product of our existential reality. But all of it was created by a creator who, by the very concept of creatorship, cannot be part of the created thing. I don't know how more simpler. I know to many it may not be simple, but there are some of you should be intelligent out there. How can you not see it? You know? My goodness.
I said, so that's what you do know? He said, yes. I said, and that's what you don't know? He said, yes. But this does exist, you just haven't discovered it yet. Yes. Therefore, could God not exist in a dimension that you haven't yet discovered?
No.
Hey.
No, he cannot. And as a Christian and a minister, I tell you he cannot. I want to find that video, whoever that pastor is, and do a rebuttal on this. This is ridiculous. This is the garbage that is being spewed out there. These Christians think they're smart. You're being, asinine. I'll tell you just like it is. This is stupid argumentation. And it's why the atheists have their heyday every time you guys open your mouth. Because this was ridiculous what this guy did. He completely destroyed his posit. You cannot show that God exists. And listen, do you as a pattern, I'll save it for his video, but even if you believe that God exists, then why don't you ask God to give you the evidence of it? You're the man of God, right? See? It's baloney, because the fact is, and God knows it, the Bible knows it, I know it, that he doesn't, because he created existence. He cannot be part of it. It's a realm. Existence is a space interwoven with time. I mean, how much they call it space after all. Time and space. So the creator of time and space cannot be in it. He's not be subject to it. So all the definitions and concepts we have of existence only pertain to the things of existence. And God simply is not one of them. He created it. Simple as that.
We looked up at the night sky and we didn't immediately see a giant space sloth called Snacktopus pooping gumballs. Well, it would be illogical of us to conclude that there was no such giant space sloth out there, pooping the gumballs that eventually wind up in every grocery store or quarter vending machine that we come across. Therefore, we should default to automatically believing in Snacktopus until such time as 100%.
The problem here is that he's arguing something that can be proven that does not exist. It can be proven. It's simply, these things, they're poor examples. Always the atheist goes to these silly examples because you don't have a leg to stand on. The God of the Bible is not part of existence. And you're trying to force it and trying to make it look like everyone else is stupid. They're not. You guys are simply not understanding the concept of the God of the Bible. It's simple. And the Bible was written by cavemen and you still don't get it, right? I'm just using the stuff against it. Because they always like to say that it was written by cavemen. It's a story, but what, you don't understand it, do you? Okay, so anyway, the concept is clear, and I'm not going to reiterate it again. You can tell the quality difference between my explanation and what he is doing right now, right? So I think that's clear. If you don't see that clear, go get your milk and your safety blanket, security blanket, and just rest it out. Just sit it out for the rest.
Percent of the universe, as well as all heretofore undiscovered incorporeal realms and alternate dimensions that might exist, have been completely discovered and explored to conclusively rule out the existence of Snacktopus. Now, that's just good logic right there. No, John, that isn't how it works. Atheism is not insisting that nowhere in existence could anything that could ever be construed or misidentified as a god exists. Some atheists may make that claim, but in general, atheism is the lack of belief in or the non-acceptance of any God claim.
Atheism. So this is atheism in a nutshell. You say there's a God. I say, can you prove that? You say no. I say I don't believe you then.
So with that out of the way, let's get back.
Yeah, you don't believe them because they can't prove to you, but proof requires a thing. So you can, see, this is what happens. You can accept, if you can, conceptual validity. So the question becomes, see, if you're talking to me, then you got a problem, because you have to admit, is it conceptually valid? Author of a book, does he exist inside the book? The artist of a painting, or the painter of the painting, do they exist inside their painting? So these are things that we create, and we don't exist in them. So how can you be discussing a God who claims to create the heavens and the earth, all of reality and existence, and then insist on proof? See, so the ridiculous person is the one asking for the proof and the evidence. The discussion shouldn't be about proof or evidence. And there is evidence, because the conceptual validity of an author not being part of his creation is conceptually valid. So there's your evidence that God is outside of being a thing, and therefore your question or your insistence is invalid. That's what we can prove. Okay? So that's where the discussion's at. Not does God exist and show me proof of it. Again, Christians need to stop insisting on something that God did not allow to come into the Bible. He did not allow the word existence to be associated with him in the Bible. The Bible, the English Bible, was printed before the word evolution came into common use. If God had wanted to prove to all of us that he existed, he would have included it there. If Christians wanted to prove that God exists just as a religious zeal, and just say, we want everyone to be Christian, believe in our religion, so they would have waited for the word existence, and then that's it, we got it, God exists. It didn't happen, folks. Okay, so it's only that he is. And Genesis 1:1, the first verse of the Bible, tells you that he does not exist. He's not supposed to be in his creation. He's the creator of it. Simple. And if you can't fathom that, that is a failing on your part, really. That's all there is. You can find all your little stories you want, but the fact is that conceptually speaking, Genesis 1 is giving you the claim of the God of the Bible, and that then eliminates any serious intellectual request for proof and evidence, other than the conceptual validity of the claim, which it has clearly. So that's that. All right, so do you have to believe in God because of the conceptual validity of this relationship between reality and existence with a God who creates it? No, you don't have to believe. That's not what God is asking you to do either. That's not what he's asking you to do. The question of belief in God really is dependent on the Holy Spirit. It's simply when the day comes that the Holy Spirit knocks on your door and posits Christ to your life, that's the only day that you have to grapple with a decision. Until then, you keep living your life, because living your life, you're worshiping. If there is a God, right, and the God of the Bible is he, you are glorifying him by waking up in the morning. It is glorifying God. There's no escaping it. In a macabre way, the only true atheist is a dead one who commits suicide to take away any idea that I may be giving glory to a God that created. You hate God so much, then, and a lot of people may not like the way that sounds, but that's the fact. Because as long as you are living the life that God gave us and made for us, praise God. Say it or not, it's what's happening. Because this is my creation. You're it. That's it. There's no escape from it. So
Back to your deer analogy. Yes, it would be silly to walk into the woods, not immediately see any deer, and conclude that therefore deer must not exist. But that would be silly because there's mountains of evidence for the existence of deer. right down to there being actual deer in captivity today. You cannot exist. Seen one, but nothing substantial. This monster drastically exist.
Again, the issue of existence is not germane to the God of the Bible, right? So we've already explained that. He's still, again, atheists will do this. They'll continue to go, not that he's being confronted by the reasoning that I've been given, but they will continue honing in. I mean, the basis for their atheism is an reasoning about existence in relation to a God who claims to have created it. That's all. The best that an atheist can do is be agnostic. That's the best. It shows intelligence on the part of an atheist to be agnostic, because truly you just don't know. You don't have enough information to make, but there's conceptual validity. So at least, well, until any further personal evidencing, that's all you have. And what's wrong with that? If there's a God, let him, come and see you. When I was 8 years old, I reasoned as much, and I prayed. I said, listen, everybody here in this church, they look like they're praising you and they're worshiping you. Looks like they're having one or another type of experiences. But I can't go by that. They got the pastor preaching and teaching this and that, but again, I can't go by that. I even can't go by the history here. And if you are God, you know what I'm saying, because I wasn't saying it out loud. No, if I was saying it where only God could hear it, which is in the heart, in the head, right here. Only God could hear it there, if there is one, right? So understand that, and I won't say everything that happened, but if I have something in my head, and complex things come about in the physical world, that either means that there is a God who was listening or who was conversing with me, or I am a powerful meta-human. That's what it means. Because there's no other way. It cannot be coincidental. And again, when I'm talking about what evidences there was, demonstrations, they were complex demonstration that left no shadow of a doubt. See? So that's what's left. And until you're able to really be scientific about it to the degree that you could, with a thing that's outside, conceptually valid but outside, supposed to be a being. See, that's where you get it. That's where you catch it. Oh, but it's supposed to be a being. Right. See? It's life. It's alive. And the Bible says and shows that being communicated. We got him now. We got him now. Yeah, and I was 8 years old. Okay? 54 years ago. No doubt. None. Okay? So, again, you don't have to believe me. And you don't have to believe this guy, this Christian here. You don't have to now. He was an atheist. Now he's a Christian. You don't have to believe him. Don't. But you do owe it to yourself to seek the truth. And that's all I'm going to say. Let's see what other thing. I'm going to skip through this because there's a lot of points. Again, this video is from Professor Plink, and it's on the conversion of an atheist to Christianity. So you can go and listen to it and see what you think about it.
Atheism, or lack of belief atheism, is also a thing. And you know that, because you looked right past where it said that in your own citation.
Why the fuck you
Generalized and fairly likely assumption. But then also, there's the little fact that you're comparing the likelihood of something that's entirely physical and natural existing, like aliens, in an expansive universe. You're comparing that to the likelihood of something entirely metaphysical and supernatural existing in the universe.
See, that is the problem. That is the problem. Not only that it contradicts Genesis 1:1 when you do that, right? But you're not, the people not understanding what it means to insist that God exists. Not only are you blaspheming, if the God of the Bible is, you are blaspheming that God by saying that He exists. Is simply a blasphemous statement. Really is, because you are belittling the God who created all things and making Him into a thing, necessarily so. So the Christian really needs to. It's not about getting education, because when you get an education, they tell you that God exists. You have to believe that God exists. You're being deceived. Deceived by people who don't know any better. This is what you find in the theology schools. You would think that in theology school they would teach you sense, but they don't. They're continuing this game. They don't know it. That's the problem. Okay? They don't know it, but they got the degree. Right? So there goes all these degrees down into the garbage, because you're simply not even using the word in English correctly. So what is worth your degree? You're sullying me and what I represent. You know, everybody now got a piece of paper, and it's not worth more than the one that's on a roll hanging in my bathroom. So again, these theological schools here, they need to up their game, because this is really nonsense. That's what's happening. It's nonsense. You know, someone asked me for their, some answering some comments so they can go in they were doing a report or even a thesis for their theological degree, and I just didn't respond. I just did not respond, because I said, you don't want the answer. You don't want me to answer, really, because I know they didn't know any better. But you didn't want my answer. Okay, so that's what's happening out there, and the result is this continual cycle of error, back and forth, straw man gods, because that's what it is, and no one is the wiser. No one's getting any benefit from this. It's a dismal situation. So again, the word existence should not be used for the God of the Bible. It does not then disqualify the concept, valid concept, of what is the Bible, the biblical posit for that God. It doesn't disqualify it. It is what it is. Simply, you just don't have to accept it. You don't have to believe, but you have to admit that conceptually it is valid. So the end result is that the atheists can't be atheists. If they're intelligent, the stupid ones will always consider themselves as atheists. What the intelligent ones will do and have done eventually is they've become agnostic instead of saying they're atheist. Agnostic, we just don't know enough. It's fine. And that's honest, you know? Okay, but neither offend God, neither. Nobody here is offending God, not at all. Except maybe for the Christian, for the theist, unfortunately. Do you realize that the only one that may be indeed offending God is the theist, saying that God exists or insisting on it? That's the only one. The atheist doesn't. The agnostic doesn't. The only one who is capable here of blaspheming God is the theist who insists against the biblical teaching that God exists. Because that's not what the Bible teaches. Okay, so that is very clear. Okay.
In case that's not clear, there is no evidence for the existence of anything supernatural, and no reason to assume that anything supernatural exists. It is a massive leap to assume anything like a God concept can exist. But aliens? Any non-Earth-based biological organism existing and originating on another planet? Yeah, that's not nearly as much of a stretch as any concept of God.
Not any concept of God, but that a God exists, yes, absolutely. But of course, that's what he's assuming. So whenever you're hearing atheists explaining their posits, it's even when they don't say it, they are referring to God existing. And that's where the conversation's at. They're not talking about what I'm talking about. They would want to, because again, the desire to deny that there is a God forces them to deny what I'm saying as well. But intellectually, they can't. Meaning, if they were honest, they can lie, they can ignore and deny, and they will be intellectually dishonest. But other people who are just as dishonest will accept it. They don't see it. They just see it as just defending their posit. But those who are intelligent will say, that's just an excuse. It's just denying the possibility. And the concept lends to a possible that it is possible that a God created reality and existence, and simply cannot be then evidenced through the physical, naturalistic way that we conduct science, simply. And that is an honest, conclusion by intelligent people. So, again, that's where this debate falls down into, just simple as that.
All three components of RNA and DNA non-biologically in a laboratory under conditions found in space, said Michael Nuevo, research scientist at NASA's Ames Research Center. Claims
what he's talking about there are evidences of how the argument was that how did life begin then, and this and that, without there being, and also the assumptions of intelligent design and all this. These are all attempts by theists to make God exist again. They are wrong. Okay? It's going to happen. I can already tell you what's happening here. It's going to, because it has to be. Let me tell you first what I believe is the fact. The fact is that when God created all reality, he created a copy of himself in a physical nature. What we call that is called reality and existence. And it's the reason why reality and existence has the salient nature of being eternal. Yet the eternity that the universe is supposedly has, that displays it, is not true eternity. It's not true unchanging eternity, which is what God is. God, as he is detailed or defined in the Bible, is an unchanging, unvariable God. He is eternal and unchanging. Again, he's not physical. But we know science tells us that physical things have to change. They're always in flux. And therefore, the universe is continually changing, and it's expanding and will collapse eventually and go into almost nothing, if you will, and then blow up and do it all over again. It is eternally doing that, or has the capacity, the saliency, the nature to do that. We don't know if it's done that, but all we can go by is that it has the potential of eternity, of infinity. And so, and that's it. So if God creates all things, all reality and existence according to his own pattern of himself, then that's what we're going to see, with the distinction being those things that are physical, the physical limitations. And that's what you see in science. Simply, it's not proof of God. But if there is a God, it explains why we see what we see in nature, in the universe. So that's it. Again, you don't have to believe it, because it doesn't, if you believe, let's go there now. If you believe just because of what I said, what I said could convince you that, well, maybe there is somebody, but that's not enough, for you to, you're going to be saved. I'm talking about now as the scriptures define salvation. You're going to be saved just because I convince you in this argumentation? It shouldn't. That's almost as bad as, you're going to hell if you don't repent from your sins. I don't think you're saved then either, because you're doing something out of fear instead out of true conviction. So it doesn't fit even. So I don't see any. So that's why, you shouldn't believe just because of what I said or my experience or the Christian here, the atheist turned Christian's experience. Is not an issue for you to believe in God because of our experience. No, you have to have an encounter. What he talks about, what I've said that I had for me, you need to have it for yourself, because until then, you don't really know. Simple as that. It's as simple as that. If there is a God, and it's true that he wants to save your butt, then he needs to, make himself available to you and clear to you. Simple. I did it when I was 8 years old. This atheist encountered it. So you need to have it. That's what I say. Have the real thing. The real experience. Because that's the thing. That's the only reality in this whole space. It's the reality that happens to you and with you. And that no one can take away from you. Anything else, religiosity, you've been persuaded, and all of that is not going to last you, not going to benefit you in any way. It can make you into a religious zealot, another ignorant fool out there, but it doesn't give you the reality of being a true worshiper in spirit and in truth, nor of being set free, because Jesus said you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Let's go ahead here and see what else is on this video.
When it certainly is not. Atheism is one answer to one question. Do you believe in any God? No. Trying to claim that we then need to prove that, or that one answer makes up the entirety of how we view the world and our place in it, our view of right and wrong, or gives meaning to our lives, well, that's all just dumb as all get out. Just that it's existed in a different form. It existed as primordial energy, which then expanded and cooled, allowing that energy to change. I can say that I can conceive of an invisible rainbow. It's easy to say that you can conceive of something that is beyond conception. We are temporal beings.
He means perception, not conception. I don't think he's using or allowing conceptualness in his scope here. I don't think, because people do deal with concepts that are totally non-existent and false and fake. They are concepts. Concepts, can be anything, true or not. It's still a concept, right? So I don't think he's really using that in the right way.
And we can't really think around the idea of temporal existence, which is why people can say easily enough that they can conceive of God existing outside of time, yet they still think about God carrying out actions and processes from outside of time. Actions.
Now, that's the curious thing. We do not know. I'm going to talk about this. It opens up a big area. Very fantastic. I love it. The area is how separate is time and space from God. Now, remember I said this before. I said that God created time and space according to his nature, to his being. So, and that's why we see eternal characteristics in the universe, and what makes reality and existence so convincing, so so real and so complete. Okay, but this completeness and this fullness and this eternal aspects or potential for the universe are all things that pertain to the God that's described in the Bible. But the God that's described in the Bible is not physical. So it allows, or it connects. So if God indeed creates the universe as if you will, a carbon copy of himself, and you know that the carbon copies, or any copy, is not the same as the original, right? There's differences, but there is connectivity. Then it's not a big deal for the universe to be so intertwined with its creator that God can will anything into happening at any time. You see, and the thing is that science could never detect anything but science happening. Change in temperature, started to rain. So they would never detect anything different than what God created, or the universe itself. So there's no smoke here. And so that's the issue that people are not understanding. Well, all we see is science, and science is doing this, science is doing that. These are natural forces and all that. All of these things are, in fact, what would be expected if a God created the reality and existence in his own image, if you will, according to his being, and it would be just like God himself, except it is physical, so it has limitations, right? But it tries to be eternal. It has a way of being eternal. It's not the same way that the Bible says that God is eternal, but it is, in a physical sense, eternal, in as much as it can be. It is all-encompassing, all-powerful, in as much as it can be, right? And it is omnipresent, isn't it? Isn't existence and reality everywhere? As much as it can be, except where it isn't. Right? If there are bounds, and scientists are pretty much sure that there are bounds to the universe, So therefore, it has limitations. But other than that, it is everywhere. Time and space is everywhere. So it has the same characteristics of the God of the Bible, except it is physical and limited, therefore. Right? So when, how do we know that what we're seeing is something that God is doing? How could you tell the difference? There is a way, though, I tell you that much. There is a way. And I'll just give you a hint. I've said it in other videos, but here I'll just leave the hint. Look at Moses and Pharaoh. See the way you can tell the difference. Okay? See the way that you know that God was there, that God had done something. How do you know? See if you can figure it out. I'm curious to see how many people can figure out. Put the comment below if you can. If not, contact me some other way. But, yeah. How do you know that if there was a God, that it's there? Because it is there. There is one thing that tells you that God did this. One thing and one thing alone. And see if you can catch it. Because, see, the problem is that most of you guys can't think. You have your heads up the wrong alley. And you can't see clear. But there's one element. I want to see which one of you are the smart scientist here. There's one thing that if there is a God, it's manifest. It's not that you have to guess it. You'll see it in the account with Moses and Pharaoh. Look for it. It's there. The thing is if you'll catch it or not. Okay, and let's wind up here with
the processes that require time in order for him to carry out. Carrying out complex actions like creating a universe and then making light, and then making land, and then making life, and then making humans, etc. On the seventh day he rested and all that. Well, how the hell have 7 days passed for a god if he's outside of time?
You see that? It's cute. Well, again, he's picked a bad part of the Bible. It looks good, but actually it's problematic. The reason for that is because you're talking about the word yom. And the word, I know that many Christians, and probably when you were a Christian back in the day or a religious person, they taught you that the Bible says day, right? That it is a day. But that's not the Hebrew word. The Hebrew word is yom. And forget what the Jews say, because the Jews will say it's a day, it's a day. Well, you know what? People can be wrong, right? You're wrong in religion, so don't accept it. Don't accept that it's a day. Accept what the word means. Like you like into science, we'll look at what words mean and go there. I'm surprised that atheists would accept the word day there. It's a religious interpretation. It's not what the word means. This is just religious interpretation. But yet atheists use it. So come on now. If you're going to use science, let's do it right. Go to the language and use what's there, not what's being religiously interpreted. So the word is time period. That's what yom means, right? So time period can be any time period. Okay? It's just simply, what's the context? The amount of time it took to do it. Simply, it's a very simple answer. But they're trying to make it look like 24 hours a day, which of course for the first day is impossible. I'm not going to explain why. It's very clear. There's no 24 hours in the first day. And then you have the last day, the seventh day, This is also clearly not 24 hours. Clearly. And I'll leave it there. Because for you to make it 24 hours, you have to add to it, especially the seventh day. You have to add something important to it, which is in all the other days have, but not the seventh day. And then the first day, of course, was when did it begin, actually? When did it begin? So, again, God created all things, which includes science. And according to science, we do have 7 yoms. Science does agree with the Bible. We do have 7 yoms, 7 time periods. Now, if you know science, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? See, if you don't, you don't. Simple. But the Bible does not say days. The English Bible does, but that is an interpretation. It's not even a translation, because if I was a translator, I would have put time periods, and we wouldn't be in this mess right now. Think about it. Okay, there's a lot of other stuff in the Bible just like that.
We still conceive of God using temporal terms and conceptions, because that's really all we can do. It's the same thing with no space. We really can't imagine there being no height, width, or depth. The only thing that comes close would be something like our imagination, because the things that we envision in our minds don't actually have height, width, or depth. They're just thoughts. Except
we do know that we are imagining it. We do know. So there, you see, that's where the dishonesty comes into play. You do know that you are imagining it. It is part of your imagination, right? Now, what this guy is saying has nothing to do with imagination. Because, like I said, people don't change their lives over an imagination. Maybe Barney and his group do, but normal people don't. And imagination is not does not do complex acts and things in the real world. That's not imagination. So again, I know what your experience was imaginary because it was religious. All religious experience is imaginary. But what he is explaining and what I've explained is not imagination.
the way that we're imagining them, they do. I don't imagine.
Mixer here is the universe. Every knob here controls a fundamental constant of physics. This right here is the gravitational constant. Turn it up a hair, stars burn out too fast. Turn it down.
You have to listen to this video. I'm not going to play the whole video. It takes too long, especially when I talk and make it longer. But what he's saying, this is the Christian guy talking now, that he's saying that everything is exactly the way it has to be for the things to be. And this is a common apologetic stance that people have, that Christians do in particular. And it really is weak as can be. And I tell you that as somebody that that believes that God created all things. That is a very weak argument. And simply because there is no, when we look at something, we are structuring it while we're looking at it. So that our observations, he's making a comparison of this fine adjustment to have this and that and that and this and this and this, as if somebody is there adjusting something. The atheist here is going to say that that's the way it is. It's no adjustment. It's not an issue of somebody there turning dials. That is what you're adding to what we're seeing. You're adding it to make sense of it with trying to make God be doing the dial as if it was dialable. And the atheist saying, who told you that it was dialable in the first place? Right. So he's saying that basically the idea is that the universe is the way it is. You know, that it is that way. There's not something that you are going to adjust and this way that like it was so to speak, that it could be adjusted. It is what it is. So it's not a good argument to say, oh, but if it was like this, it's like saying, oh, but anything, oh, but if you had black hair, this and that, you know, it's like ridiculous. It is what it is. And you can't read more into it than what it is. Simple. So it's not a good argument to make. We like to think, yeah, God can do this and that, which he can. But there is no inherent proof of that. You understand that? That's the issue. There is no inherent proof of it. Simply the universe is the only thing that causes problems for an atheist, or for science for that matter of fact, is that that reality is based on math. Really, that's where the argument, their argument has great difficulty. Because why is it? Why is mathematics pervasive in reality and existence? That's the deeper question. That's more better than this Yamaha example that this guy is doing here. It's math, actually. Because the processes of the universe are being run mathematically. Now, some people argue that this is just our observation, but there is evidence in mathematics, in science, that things are mathematically being processed. That this is math in action. It's not just something that we're imposing on nature. So to better understand it, we're actually seeing nature itself. We're observing the math in nature. And we are discovering the math because of nature. Right? That's a different thing. Not our imposition of math to measure nature. We are learning math through nature, through its action, through its behavior. And then the question then lies, then where did the math come from? See, that is the question. See? Because math is a very, very problematic for the atheists or people who don't believe in God. Math is where you really need to look at. Listen, I can continue on a lot of these videos. I think we did enough on this one. If you're interested, go see Professor Plink's channel. That's the name of it. Simply, and I'll put it up on the screen again. And thank Professor Plink for his good analysis, as always. I pick videos where there's some good reasoning so that I can bounce off of it. And so he provides a good 14 hours ago at this time. What the atheist turned Christian contributed here was really a good presentation of the why
and help to balance the conversation.
The why he changed so drastically, and he provides that. I gave my experience as well, and so really that's really the gist of what's to be considered here with this. I think that the epistemic bias in this video on the part of the presentation, what the atheists believe, is what it is. Again, the issue is on existence. That's where the problem is with believers more so than the atheists. The atheists only reacting. I mean, we had thousands of years. First, Israel, before atheism, Israel was supposed to do their thing. Of course, they failed. Atheism started to grow in the ancient world. There was no Israel there. I did a study on this that fits the timeline perfect. Atheism came about because Israel wasn't about. And then the Christian development later on continue with the atheisms there hand in hand because again there was no comprehension, and still today there is erroneous comprehension in terms of the existence issue, which I believe that I have resolved, and I have defeated atheism because of that. You're really not intelligent if you continue with an atheistic posit. You must be agnostic. If you're intelligent, people who lack understanding will always be whatever they are, and they'll continue insisting that God exists if they're religious and they're Christian or theistic. They'll continue because, again, they do not have the intellectual capacity to see what Genesis 1:1 actually is saying. And not enough obedience to God, even to the Bible, and they add to it by saying that God exists. It's not what the Bible says. Not the King James Version. Anyway. Later versions are not qualified. They're not qualified. And any Bible that says exists in it, you should get rid of it. You can't really trust it. It's hard enough to accept the King James Version as it is. But if your Bible says, at least it doesn't have exist in it. Now, if your Bible has exist in it, absolutely. Just get rid of it. It's simply going to not teach you what you really need to understand. You're not going to help these atheists. You're not going to help them see the light. So that's it. You're just going to be, again, another generation of people debating all over again, over and over and over. A broken record. That's it. It's broken, folks. It's broken. Okay, so anybody want to have me discuss these my concepts, my ideas? I don't get into debate, but discussion. Well, we can have discussion. I will entertain any discussion you want on your platform. You want to discuss, then we can have a discussion. Okay, just contact me whichever way you can. Try it. If you're smart enough to find me, then you win me. If not, it's eluding you. Take care until next time.